I'm going to be ranking classes in the game according to how impressive I personally believe that class is playing in solo. Is it harder for those classes to win? That's S tier. Or is it easier for that class to win? Then it's D tier, right? We go right down to the bottom. Guys, we have reached the end of the positivity stream, okay? For a moment here, we're going to go dark. We're going to get into some real opinion. I'm going to use some bad words, okay? If you don't want to hear me swear or talk shit about a class that maybe you enjoy, now is a good time to pause the stream, take a break, get a snack, come back in like 20 minutes because I've got nothing else good to say. Okay, here we go. I'm going to do Druid first. Spoiler alert, all these classes are D tier. And by D tier, I mean I'm not impressed with them in solo. This is a ranking that goes from how hard is it to win in solo, and therefore how impressive is that gameplay to me, according to my personal opinion, versus how easy is it to win in solo, and therefore how unimpressed am I of that class in particular. And where this class falls on the chart, right, gives it the S, A, B, C, D tier ranking. Druid is in D tier, the bottom of the list, okay? But of the D tier, I would almost say that these days, I'm going to move it up next to Mosquito in this kind of it's not the absolute basement. And I never thought I'd say that about Druid, but I feel like finally Iron Mace has been kicked in the face enough by the community to say, you got to change how this fucking class works or else we're going to quit the game forever. They're like, okay, finally we'll make some changes. So there have been positive changes to Druid, which takes it out of the absolute bottom tier here. Okay, let's talk about it. What are the things that are impressive about Druid playstyle? What are the things that Druid has to overcome that make me impressed with their style of play? There are a couple of things. Let's be fair. The Druid does have to maintain a kind of map awareness. The Druid has to learn the modules and know where they can and can't transform. Let me also be clear. I'm talking about... I just have Druid on the list. I don't have Healer Druid versus Animal Form Druid. And I know there is a division these days, right? I know Druid has now become... There is more of a kind of a binary within the Druid class build space, right? You can now build Healer Druid and you no longer get access to the instant transformation animal form, okay? That's such a good move. That is a rare Iron Mace win related to Druid class design. You can spec into Healing Druid, you can spec into Animal Form Druid. And that is a relatively recent emergence, and that's a big step forward. But I lack a bit of nuanced understanding of Druid, so again, I'm sorry if I miss a bit of build nuance. I don't play Druid, I don't play all classes, so I just have Druid. But what I do mean here is Animal Druid. I don't have that big of an issue with a support class Healer Druid in trios, and I basically never see like a pure, like bonk Healer Druid in solos. The Druids I see in solos do rely on animal forms, so we're talking about Animal Druid. To play a good Animal Druid, you have to have map awareness, you have to know where you can and can't transform, you have to know what situation, what position is good or bad for you. And that takes time to learn, and I respect that. You also have to have manual dexterity. There is a bit of fiddliness, similar to Bard, where you're always switching between forms, and that is not easy to do just from like a manual dexterity POV, right? So I respect that as well about the Druid playstyle. Also, what else? What else does the Animal Druid need to overcome in order to win? There are limited options for ranged damage. So as much as I hate the animal forms, and like almost everything to do with the animal forms, at least they have to do melee damage until Penguin, right? Historically, all the animal forms have been a form of melee damage, and that meant at least they had to get in your face, and they had to engage with more of the whole combat system to deal and respond to melee damage. To anyone just tuning in, this is how impressive is the class to me playing in solo. How impressed am I? And right now we're talking about the things that actually I am impressed by. When I think about a druid player playing druid, the things they have to overcome are these things. They need map awareness, they need manual dexterity. They have limited options for range damage. For the most part, they need to get in your face and deal melee damage. And on the whole, I have a greater respect for a class that needs to rely on melee damage instead of range damage. I have a fighter melee bias, okay? That's how I'm forming my opinion, but this is just my opinion. Those are the things that I respect about Druid. What are the things I think are unfair advantages? I think an unfair advantage of Animal Druid is that it actually has the fewest downsides of any class in solo. You might have a different opinion, and maybe my opinion here is like, maybe I don't fully understand the advantages of other classes, but from my POV, from my experience, in solo, I think there's almost no better class to play, right? Druid, Animal Druid, since its inception, has dominated solos. Why? Because it has the best mobility in the game. And in solos, mobility and move speed and your ability to traverse the map is the most important aspect of the game. Having better mobility than your opponent is the cause of winning or losing more fights than any other factor in solo. And I think that the animal form druid has the best mobility and therefore the fewest downsides of any class in solo. They can get in your face and tank as a bear. They can stay at the edge of your melee range and harass as a panther. They can punish as a panther. If they get in trouble, they can chicken jump away, which is just one of the most annoying things to experience, right? You fight a druid, you do the work to get them to half HP, and then they panther chicken jump away to reset. They have access to rat form, and rat form lets them access parts of the map that other classes can't access. It's the same issue as double jump rogue, right? It's the same issue as sorcerer's electric dash. Anything that gives a class the ability to hide and prevent taking melee damage from other classes that cannot access those places is fundamentally broken. Grants that class a kind of de facto invulnerability. The combination of these things, I'm actually a lot less angry going through because there's a rationality to it, right? There's so many things that have already been said. Maybe I feel like maybe all these things have been said, so I don't need to like beat the dead horse, right? I think Druid should have a dead horse animal form where they just lay there. They just lay there and bask in the fact that this class has been so poorly designed that it's led to more player attrition and a smaller player base since it came out 14, 15 months ago than any other factor in the game. Druid has been the biggest business mistake, has been the biggest factor in chasing away an otherwise healthy and engaged player base than any other factor in the game. And that makes me sad because Dark and Darker was my favorite game. And if I think about what's the one thing above all else that caused the downfall of this game, that caused the attrition, that slowly choked off the player base and chased people away and made this game worse and worse and discouraged new players the most, right? It's Druid. It's Druid. Anyway, I think it has the fewest downsides of any class in solo. I think it's probably the worst class design in the game because of its game-breaking mobility, right? You give the class the ability to break away from any PvP engagement, to traverse the map, to move through mobs, to jump through doors, to reset at will. The class is basically unkillable, right? In many ways. And there are lots of other examples of classes being unkillable that we talked about. The double jump mosquito rogue is unkillable in some instances. Smite cleric with divine protection is unkillable in some instances. The sorcerer is unkillable in some instances, right? But I think the animal druid is probably the most unkillable of all, and that's really annoying. On top of that, as if the mobility and other advantages of the class weren't enough, when you are actually in a melee fight, in a PvP situation with an animal druid, you are face to face with some of the worst character model design, character implementation I've ever seen in like a contemporary online PvP multiplayer game. The bears, the panthers, they look like they're in, you know, like the old like Victorian carousels, like horses that have like the pole that goes through them. The bears turn so stupidly. The panthers turn so stupidly. I remember my wife, this was like a year ago, right? She saw me playing Dark and Darker, and I was fighting a druid, and it was a panther. And she was like, "What the fuck is that?" And I was like, "This is a panther." She's like, "Is this like, is this like the beta?" Like she thought that looking at the panther, it was so stupid looking, right? This is a lay person. This is like not a dad fan. This is not like someone who, my wife is not like a power gamer, right? My wife is like a cozy gamer, doesn't see a lot of games, looked at this thing and was like, "What the hell is that piece of shit?" And I was like, "This is the panther." And like, is that the best they could do? Basically was what it was. Even just the visuals of their long bodies spinning around as the player looks around, and it's so bad. Yes, is just messed up. It's supposed to be slow, but man, if you turn, you just win. It's true. It's true. It's so poorly implemented. So, I mean, it'd be a different story. They could almost have the escape mobility. I would almost tolerate that. Almost. If fighting them in melee was more satisfying, right? But instead, on top of the broken class design, the broken mobility, all the advantages that they get in a solo context, still, when you're fighting them face to face, they just turn their stupid asses and you miss your swing because they're like, it's a shitty carousel, and you can see that y-axis where they just rotate. There aren't many more examples of just how shitty the game is, right? Dad is a shitty game. It is. We all fell in love with it. We've got rose-tinted glasses for this game because it ticked a lot of boxes for us. But dudes, we're being honest. This is a shitty video game, okay? It looks shitty, it acts shitty, it feels shitty. It's a shitty game. And there are fewer instances of where this is more apparent than when you're trying to fight an animal form druid in melee. And they're just turning and twisting away from you, right? And roaring up and then turning into a chicken and jumping away. Animal form druid is one of the shittiest forms of the game. Okay, moving on.